welcome to SciLux, a podcast where you can learn about scientific developments and technological changes in Luxembourg. In the first episode of SciLux, we are going to talk about automatised payment system by the National Health Fund, a touchless screen developed in Luxembourg, and supercomputers on Luxembourgish soil. But first, it's pub quiz question time. So this is the spot where I'm going to present you one question, and it is really worth listening until the end of the podcast because that's where I'm going to give you the solution to the question. And today's question is, what do a Luxembourgish mythical figure and one of today's themes have in common? Remember to listen until the end of the podcast where I'll give you the solution. And now for the subjects of today's podcast. The CNS, so the National Health Fund, has recently announced their plans to change the reimbursement system. Currently, if we go to the doctors and we are insured with CNS, we have to either pay the invoice up front or we can do that later by bank transfer. What they want to change is that the medical practitioners would submit their receipts to CNS directly. The whole plan is supposed to be implemented by 2023 and is related to the launch of the e-santé platform. When I heard the news, it made me think of two different ideas. The first one, I started wondering how much paper gets sent here and there because of the reimbursement system. So I decided to guesstimate that. First of all, there are about 800,000 people insured with the CNS, and let's say an average person goes to the doctor 6 times a year. Half of the invoices are not paid up front, and then of course CNS goes back with their calculations. So we are talking about 15 sheets of paper per person, and that we multiply by the 800,000 I mentioned before, it gives us a really nice number of 12 million sheets of paper a year. The second thing I was thinking of is the e-santé platform and the idea of medical chips. Is it related? I could not find any information about that, whether there was any plan, anything in the pipeline that the government wants to introduce. By the way, what happened with all these plans of medical chips? There was so much hype about it and then suddenly nobody's discussing it anymore. So are we going to have something like that in Luxembourg? I'm in two minds about it. I'm not sure. It makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, the whole idea of chips, wearable chips, but maybe it's just me. AirTouch, that's the name of the touchless screen developed in Luxembourg. It's just enough to put your finger 14 centimeters away from the screen in order for the screen to read that you are trying to touch certain buttons on it. It's been patented in USA and Europe, and it seems there is a lot of interest right now because of the COVID, obviously. So the company is hoping for the system to be used all over the world. I was just thinking, this is ideal for all people who always told you, do not touch my screen. They had to adjust right now because of the touch screens. And finally, they can once again tell you off if you touch their screen. So great news, isn't it, guys? And what about supercomputers in Luxembourg? The Luxembourgish government signed a procurement contract for Meluxina, a new supercomputer which will be based in Biesen in Luxembourg. It is part of the Euro HPC project, so the European High Performance Computing Project. What is Meluxina? So first of all, what is a supercomputer? Supercomputer is this amazing computer, yes, believe me, much better than your desktop computer or laptop, that is able to perform thousands or millions of calculations per second. In case of Meluxina, we're talking about 10 petaflops, and you might be wondering what a flop is. When I first heard it, I was thinking about floppy disks. If you don't remember what that was, these were at that time small, I guess now for us huge disks where we would record data. I used to play computer games from them, but this is not the same. Flops are floating point operations per second. So floating point operation, that's just floating point decimal operation, just mathematical operations, subtraction or addition or whatever else. So coming back to Meluxina, we're talking about 10 petaflops, so 10 to the 15th power, that's petascale. And our aim is that this computer would be able to calculate as much as human brain. Do you know how much a human brain can calculate? And please don't say that some people's brains probably are not able to, but let's just focus on the average. So the average human brain can calculate 1 exaflop. that will be 10 to the 18th power, and this is our aim. Of course, this is the future of computing and high-performance computing as such. What is also interesting about Meluxina is that it's going to be powered by green energy. To be precise, the plant will be powered by waste wood. So another fun, interesting fact. Have you ever wondered about the names of supercomputers? I find them really interesting. Meluxina, well, I will talk a little bit about it when I tell you the solution to the pub quiz, but also the other names. For example, the computer developed by University of Manchester is called Spinnaker. Why Spinnaker? Well, this is just an abbreviation of spiking neural network architecture. So sometimes these are abbreviations, sometimes they just explain what the supercomputer does. So, for example, there is an Earth simulator. Well, that's not very creative. We have also IBM Roadrunner. That's actually one of my favorite, I have to say. There is Mare Nostrum. That's a Spanish one. There is the Summit. Oh, that's very, very serious, isn't it? And also, as usual, I have to say that this is my pet interest. So the names in China, those English Chinese names. One of the Chinese supercomputers is called Sunway Taihu Light, whatever that means. And now it's time for the solution of the pub quiz. The question was, what do a Luxembourgish mythical figure and one of today's themes have in common? So as you could see, the last theme was about supercomputers in Luxembourg, and the name of the supercomputer is Meluxina, which is derived from Melusina, our siren in Luxembourg. To cut a long story short, because after all this is a science podcast and not a myth podcast, Count Siegfried of Luxembourg fell in love with a siren. Of course, he had no idea about that, and when he discovered it, breaking a promise to her, she ran away never to be seen again. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe or follow me. My name is Hanna Siemaszko, and this was SciLux.